this book came out in 2015. It was written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Okay, we use this book at GFLU because it closely resembles what we need out of our leaders. Okay, this book gives you an account of how the Navy SEALs use extreme ownership within their operations that they did, and then they go through and they help businesses to apply that to their overall production to make sure that they're succeed in their goals. So to be honest with you, I'm not much of a reader, so what I did is I found this audio version, and one of the cool things about the audio version is it's actually narrated by Leif and Jocko. So it was kind of nice to hear the actual author's voices. All right, so, sorry, give me a second. There we go. So let's talk about what extreme ownership is. Extreme ownership is total control or total responsibility for everything that happens within your team, good or bad. Sometimes this is hard to accept. Okay, when you do this, it can be extremely humbling. The good news about it being humbling is it helps you develop to be a better leader. Okay, so I want to find, or on your printout, there was a question that said what extreme ownership looks like at GFLU. So each one of you, whoops, to agree with someone. Each one of you has a clipboard and write down what extreme ownership is to you. Or to GFLU. Justin, what's extreme ownership to you?
Being the person that being the person that people look to for guidance in any situation.
Okay, pass the ball on to another individual.
I put under your roof equals your job 24/7, 365.
That's a good example of extreme ownership. Terry?
You're accountable for everything that goes on in your store.
Within the store? And then last name?
But it means everything is on me, the successes and the failures.
Which are all great examples of what extreme ownership looks like in GFLU itself. Okay? So the concept of extreme ownership is pretty simple. We all can say, cool, I take extreme ownership for what happened. But you have to ask yourself, are you really taking extreme ownership? It's actually not that easy to implement. Okay? How many of you are okay with a successful situation taking ownership over it? Right? Yeah? It's pretty easy, right? You're like, cool, that was something that I accomplished. How many of you are willing to take ownership when something goes sideways? All four of you? Well, that's pretty good. I don't think you've ever seen this concept. Okay, so in most cases, it's not easy to take extreme ownership when something fails. Okay, it's very hard for someone to do. So, what extreme ownership? We're gonna figure out what extreme ownership means to you. So we know what extreme ownership looks like for GFLU. So go ahead, Reed. What is extreme ownership to you?
Similar to Jiffy Lube. If I touch it, it's my responsibility to see it through.
Okay, Terry. Do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, repeat. Yeah, right.
Okay, so instead of, we already learned what extreme ownership is, or what you said it is to GFLU. So now it's what extreme ownership is to you. So Justin, go ahead.
For me, it's similar to being a father. It's just being responsible for everything. I feel that no matter what, whether I am directly responsible for it, I feel that everything is still my responsibility within my house, and I treat the business the same way.
So it's kind of the same to you for your house.
Fairly similar.
Just
Yeah.
different buildings.
It's fairly similar. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of the same. I think, the life I want to live is going to be a result of the choices I make.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it, it's like ownership of Jiffy Lube is just like being at home, I mean, if you have kids and you're, you know, making sure that they do things correctly, if they don't, then you teach.
So those are similarities between both what extreme ownership means to Jiffy Lube and what extreme ownership means to you. Okay? Two different things. Jiffy Lube, obviously, that's not your personal life, but when you have something that's in your personal life that you take extreme ownership over, it's a lot easier to identify how we can apply that extreme ownership at Jiffy Lube itself. Okay? So, in your table group, on your actual clipboards, I want you to pick one person that's going to put up the answer that you all four come together with. That's what extreme ownership isn't. Because it's easy to say what it is, but to truly understand it, we need to identify what it isn't to kind of give us the idea. So between the four of you, go ahead and come up with an idea, and one of you is going to hold the clipboard up with what extreme ownership is not.
Excuses, pointing the finger.
Yeah, you're going to get
Crying.
crying. Extreme ownership is definitely not crying. Okay? Yes, you cry about the situation. Okay? All right, so that makes sense. If you have an idea of what it isn't, so are you starting to get a better idea of how you can implement extreme ownership in your lives?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
no crime over something, right? Okay, so extreme ownership in all reality is all about you. So we talked about it's owning a situation that happens, whether it's successful, whether it fails, small or big, it doesn't matter. And you cannot force someone's behavior to change. You can't say, hey Nick, you need to be better, just do it. Okay? In all reality, when it comes to extreme ownership being about you, you need to change what you do. You need to change your approach. So through better communication, through better standards, then we can pass that on to our actual team and we can develop that extreme ownership a lot better. When you change how you talk to people, you will get a different result from your actual team. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is how we're going to implement extreme ownership. One, we're going to own it all. We talked about that and we understand what owning it all is, both at home as well as what Jiffy Lube is. You're also going to start by giving extreme ownership to your team. When you have just extreme ownership, that works for you and if you're going to communicate both. But if you yourself spread that extreme ownership between your team, and your team is going to take responsibility for the outcome. We have being humble. We talked about it, it's kind of easy to go ahead and say, cool, that's the success is all because of me. Well, when you take full responsibility for extreme ownership, you're going to end up making mistakes and we're going to learn from that. So when you make a mistake, it's really, really important to be humble over what happens, okay? Make sure you're not crying and make sure you're like, okay, cool, I made a mistake, I own it, all right? We have listening. So within your team, when you pass on that extreme ownership, listen to what your team has to tell you. When your team can have good ideas, your team can have good opinions, and that can also change the outcome of the success. It's not just you as a leader that has that extreme ownership. When you spread that thin, everybody else has a good idea. And then we can learn from that mistake. Okay? And last but not least, I apologize. Making sure people know your why. So earlier we talked about what your actual why is before we got to extreme ownership. When your team actually knows why they're doing something, they're going to be far more successful. If I were to tell you all, take that fire extinguisher off that pole and go put it outside. The job may get done, but it may not get done in the time that I need it to be done. So if I ask you, please take that fire extinguisher off the wall because it's going to explode. It makes a lot more sense. We're going to be more apt to actually take that fire extinguisher and remove it from the building. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Because they know, yeah, now you know the goal. Now you know why. You're like, oh, cool. Okay, I know why I'm going to go ahead and do that. Last thing is training your team. You cannot force the team to be successful if they have not been trained in how to be successful. So when you're actually teaching your group how to achieve something, they're more apt to get the job done in the time that you need. A great example in the book Extreme Ownership was when they were going through, the new skills were going through and they were cleaning out houses, their job was also to grab all of the evidence to prove that something was a terrorist organization within the house. When they did that, they were missing a lot of evidence. So they had to come together with a plan. Extreme ownership was placed throughout the team. They came together with an idea of how they're going to gather all of the evidence when they go through. And what ended up happening is they came up with the idea to clear room by room. When they cleared room by room, they all trained. Originally, it took a lot longer than the actual goal was. but towards the end, they were actually able to go and clear each room as needed. Each person took extreme ownership of the room that they cleared. Then they had all the evidence they needed, and when they went to go turn it in, all the evidence that they needed was there. Does that sound about right? Yep. So when we look at extreme ownership, it's easy to think that that can be only applied to the military because it's a heavy, heavy weight to carry. In all reality, extreme ownership can apply not only to Jiffy, but it can apply to you and your actual life. Does that make sense? Sound good?
Yes, sir.
Okay.